Welcome to the Movie Zone. Today we are recapping the 2008 American War movie, Hurt Locker. It's time to see Hawkeye defuse some bombs. As usual, spoilers ahead, so be ready. Let's begin. The movie is set in 2004 Baghdad, Iraq. Due to the Iraqi war, the place is overrun with the aftermath of terrorism and war. A squad consisting of 3 soldiers, led by Sergeant Thompson, Sergeant Sanborn, and Specialist Eldridge of Bravo Company's Explosive Ordnance Disposal, or EOD, investigate an improvised explosive device, or IED, by using a remotely controlled robot drone of sorts to examine it. The explosive device is full of undetonated artillery shells wired together, hidden inside a plastic rucksack. After reviewing it, the squad leader Thompson decides to detonate the device from a safe distance so that it won't cause any loss of lives and minimal property damage, even though there is a risk of firing off smaller shells. A small wagon full of explosives is attached to the robot to set the bomb off, but the wagon wheels fall off before reaching its destination. This compels Thompson to dress up in a bulky bomb disposal suit, and he walks toward the wagon. He picks it up and approaches the bomb, rigging it correctly. As he walks back, his partners Sanborn and Eldridge survey the surroundings for any suspicious people. Eldridge spots a man with a cell phone inside a butcher shop on the street. Eldridge reports it to Sanborn and runs toward the man, commanding him to drop the cell phone. Sanborn yells at Eldridge to shoot the man who is seen dialing numbers on his cell phone, detonating the explosive with Thompson still in the kill zone. The explosion kills Thompson even though he has equipped a bomb suit. Sanborn supervises the packing of Thompson's body in a coffin to send it back to his home. He glances over Thompson's possessions before sealing the coffin shut. Sergeant James is assigned to replace Thompson's position on the military base. Sanborn visits him at his housing unit, where James takes off his hardwood covers from his windows to let in more light. Sanborn advises not to remove the covers as they are used to shelter from the mortar shrapnel, but James retorts that they won't be any good if a mortar crashes through the roof. The next day, the explosives disposal team responds to a report of an explosive on a narrow street in the city. James prefers not to use a drone and puts on a bomb suit first, seemingly immune to any risk. He ignites a smoke grenade as he approaches to gain cover from potential enemies, which flusters Sanborn, who can't see James. James spots the artillery shell and disarms it, but notices a secondary wire attached. He uncovers 6 more cables, following the wire leading to 6 more bombs. After disarming the bombs, he catches the eye of a man leaving the building. James flashes a small detonator at the man, who vanishes around the corner, where he drops a battery, which could have activated the device. While returning to their base, Sanborn tells James he needs to communicate with his team more as he expresses his irritation towards James for not following standard military protocols. At the base, Eldridge speaks with the base's psychologist, Lieutenant Cambridge. Eldridge expresses his regret for Thompson's death, dry-firing his rifle several times to suggest that Thompson might have still been alive if he had shot the man with the cell phone. James buys a DVD from a young Iranian boy who calls himself Beckham. The following morning, before leaving for their next mission, Sanborn tries to warn James not to treat his duty as if it's a solo act once again, but James brushes him off once more. Their team is called out for another bomb threat. In this situation, the bomb is in a car parked in front of a United Nations building. After the building is evacuated, James walks toward the car in the bomb suit, engulfed in flames due to a gunshot from a sniper. James uses a fire extinguisher to put out the fire and examines the car while Eldridge and Sanborn take positions as lookouts. Examining the trunk, he observes several of the same types of shells he'd seen before. He removes the bomb suit, knowing it won't protect him if the bomb goes off, and undertakes a lengthy search for the triggering device. At one point, when Sanborn tries to communicate with James through a headset, James finds it distracting and discards it. Sanborn and Eldridge notice a man filming the incident with a camera, along with several groups of Iraqis watching from the rooftops. This makes them feel increasingly alerted and repeatedly orders James to hurry up, but James ignores them. In the car, James finally finds the detonator and detaches it. When they return to the Humvee, Sanborn hits James as he is angry. James refused to communicate during the mission. Back in the base, a senior commends James for his steady nerves and ability to handle such a crisis. When asked for the exact number of bombs James has disposed of, James answers with 873 bombs, further impressing the senior. The next morning, James and Beckham, the kids who sold James the pirated DVD, wagering a deal that James would buy another movie from him if Beckham could block a shot at the makeshift goal. Beckham blocks the shot, and James agrees to buy another movie from him, menacingly threatening him if it's defective. Eldridge is again approached by Cambridge, this time in the garage. Cambridge asks how Eldridge is doing as he remarks how his team and team leader is great. Cambridge notices his sarcastic tone and asks whether he is being sarcastic or not. Denying this, Eldridge describes how his team leader almost got him killed, and being killed in the line of duty is his greatest honor. Cambridge tries to assure him by describing war as a once-in-a-lifetime experience and how it could be fun, but he doesn't get positive. Cambridge exclaims that these talks are voluntary and Eldridge doesn't have to involve himself in this conversation if Eldridge doesn't want to. Finally, Eldridge asks Cambridge to come from behind the wire to experience his feelings, and Cambridge leaves, saying that he will come if the circumstance calls for it. The team goes out to the desert for the next mission to detonate some explosives. After the first explosion, they prepare to explode another bomb. James stops Sanborn to drive to the blast zone to get the gloves he left there. While he's gone, Sanborn expresses his desire to accidentally kill James while he was down there, but Eldridge convinces Sanborn not to. Heading back to the city, they encounter a group of armed men and a stopped SUV. Approaching the armed men with firearms, Sanborn commands them to put their guns down and hands up. The men obey, dropping their weapons. One of them reveals himself to be a British commander, which relaxes the team. The British man explains they have a flat tire and don't have the equipment to fix it. James offers them the equipment from their Jeep. Abruptly, the guy fixing the tire is shot by a sniper, which makes everyone run for cover. In the meantime, the British commander shoots both of his prisoners as they run away. He explains that the reward is the same even if the target is captured dead or alive. They clash against the unknown enemy, but 2 of the British people die, including their commander. After an intense sniper shootout, Sanborn, Eldridge, and James somehow managed to survive this intense fight with a stronger bond forming between the team as they found out they could work well together. However, Eldridge and Sanborn are puzzled to learn that James is a team player. For their next mission, Cambridge accompanies the team as they patrol a building where bomb materials are found. Cambridge patrols out the building while the team searches inside. The team discovers the bomb-making supplies but fails to find the bomb makers, as they seem to have left the building quite recently. James finds the corpse of a child he assumes to be Beckham, full of explosives. Initially, the team decide to blow up the building using the kid's body, but after much thought, James decided to remove the explosives from the body, and he carried the remains to their vehicle. Outside, when Cambridge attempts to clear the locals from the street, another explosive is dropped that kills Cambridge. This leaves Eldridge in shock when he attempts to find him in the blast area, but can only retrieve his helmet. In the base, attempting to learn whether Beckham is alive or not, James interrogates the man selling DVDs about Beckham, but fails to find any useful information. Later on, James follows the man to his home, where he finds a different man in the kitchen who is initially scared but cooperates with James's demands. After getting yelled at by a woman in the house, James realizes he has made a mistake. He returns to the base, passing hundreds of sulky-looking locals. At the base gates, he is suspected to be an intruder and is forced to the ground, but after checking his ID, the officer frees him. During the night, the team is contacted to check a bomb blast zone to confirm how it was carried out. When they reach the destination, they find out the suicide bomber blew up near an oil tanker, causing a blast area. After searching around the area filled with pure devastation, James theorizes the bombing was not a suicide bombing and was a remote bombing. So the 3 split up to search the street to find the bomber. Sanborn and James manage to meet each other, but Eldridge is kidnapped by thugs. Sanborn and James follow the kidnappers, and after killing them, they manage to retrieve Eldridge, but James accidentally wounds Eldridge's leg. After returning to the base, James takes a moment in the shower alone. He also sees Beckham the following morning, proving his little espionage to be a complete waste. Due to his injury, James has to retire, so a helicopter flies him off for his recovery. When being seen off by James and Sanborn, Eldridge is very bitter with James for his injury, but thanks Sanborn before being flown off. On the next mission, Sanborn and James are sent off to a site where a man is standing alone in the middle of a large plaza. James orders the translator to tell the man to open his shirt to reveal what's underneath it. The man is seen with a vest of C4 attached to steel bars and locked together with padlocks. The man cries for his life, saying he has a family and kids. James desperately tries to remove the padlocks, but fails to cut through. Finding out the bomb is timed with only 2 minutes left on the timer. Not having enough time, James must leave the man behind, causing the bomb to go off. James is tossed out of the blast area by the bomb's force. Sanborn rushes towards him, thinking he is dead, but James is only unconscious and wakes up. Shaken by the incident, Sanborn expresses his fear that he will die in Iraq, not being able to start a family of his own. James tries to comfort him, saying he'll be able to make it back home and start his own family. Finally, the army rotation ends with James being able to go back home to his family, but he realizes that he cannot adjust to domestic life, and the relationship between his wife and his daughter becomes increasingly stiff. The movie ends with James returning to Iraq in a new rotation and approaching another bomb site. What do you think about this gripping movie? Tell us in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe. See you next time.